Hi, my name is Richard Watts and I'm going to introduce you to my new grid system called Autumn. Now, if you're new, then carry on watching this. If you're already established with SAS and GitHub, then skip to about 5 minutes in. So if you're new, Autumn is an extremely flexible grid system. You'd hope that I'll eventually evolve it into a fully fledged extensive framework, but however my free time permits. The prerequisites that you need are Ruby and SAS. Why should you choose Autumn? Extremely customizable. There's actually two grid systems incorporated into this. There's easily nest and offset your grid. It's semantic, superb browser support, it's lightning quick, it uses SAS, there will be extensive documentation, I promise, and it's not Bootstrap. So any of you that are miffed about the whole Bootstrap website theme trend, don't worry about it. You're not actually tied into any specific design style in this grid system. Syntax, really simple. The only mandatory class is the row class, and we're going to use that to contain our main aspects of our site. So your content, your sidebar, etc. Browser support, like I said, really good. IE 8 and plus. Anyway, let's get on with it. So you download the zip file. I'm going to drag it straight onto the desktop just for ease of use. You may have already noticed that I've got one here. That's just in case I need to speed things up later on. So again, if you're new, what we want to start doing is we want to get SAS to start watching this file. What it will do is SAS will watch this file, will make our styles in this file, and then SAS will compile this file into a raw CSS file. So to do that, I want to open up Terminal, I want to navigate to the directory, and I'm already in there. We want to list its contents. We can see we're in the right directory. We want to do SAS --watch style.scss, and we want to do semicolon style.css. So this is basically saying SAS watch this file and compile it into this file. So as soon as we press enter, we're going to get our raw CSS file. SAS is ready. Now we can literally start dragging our files into Sublime Text. These are the three files that we're going to be working with. So here is the main shell of your HTML markup. Contains the JavaScript libraries that are essential to get this working in IE 8, and just to make it more compatible with things like that. It's very important that you use the link tag to incorporate your style because of the way Selectivizer works. It's also very important that you host Selectivizer.js on the same server as your website. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have Selectivizer.js on the same server as your website, you will not have media query support in IE 8. So going on to style.scss, I've got a quick reference guide up here that goes through what the some of the mixins are in the grid file, what some of the mixins and their functions and what they do. This is where you're going to write all of your styles, because it's importing the grid file for you. So this is where you're going to want to write and publish all your styles. So things like, okay, so that's simple as that. In our grid file, we've got our variables at the top of the page. These are just basic typography ones. We've got another little quick start guide up here where I've explained to you that the default settings for the grid is a 12-column fluid grid. If you can change it to 24, 16, 8, however many you want. And I've supplied the actual percent to change the column width if you want a 24-column grid. Again, you can just, it's basic maths. 100 divided by 24 is 4.1666. And you just plug that in as the value and then change your total columns to 24 and job done. Your max width is going to be of the row. So again, you'll be able to see that in action later on. The padding, that controls the border box grid system. I mean, if you don't know what the border box grid system is, go and read Paul Irish's post on the border box. It basically tells the box model not to take into consideration the padding on elements. Really good. And then the G is for gutter, for the other grid system that makes use of margins to split elements from each other. So down here we've got our mix-ins. I've used border box as a mix-in because a lot of people would do universal selector and then put the border box in there, but because of a performance debate, I'm just chose to incorporate it in a mix-in. Clearfix, you've got your row. These are the two that you're going to find repeating over and over again. So base will be for the grid system that uses margin as its gutter. Span base will be for the grid system that uses the border box value for its gutters. Now they're both interchangeable, don't worry, I'll illustrate that later on. Down here is the functions, this is the engine room, this is where everything really comes alive. No real reason to edit this unless you're experimenting. But anyway, let's get on with writing some code. We want to first give ourselves a header. We want to define a section and give it a class of row. Like I said, the row is the only mandatory class that you need. I mean, you could change that to container, no problem at all, and then call it container here, and then just include row as long as you remember that the mixin is called row. You can change the mixin name if you really wanted to, but I just work with rows. It's just habit. So once we've defined a row, we can start defining our classes. So we want a content class, and we want a sidebar. Just some content here, sidebar here, and end of our section, and we want to have a footer as well. So like you see, I'm using a bit more semantic naming of classes. It doesn't tie, you don't have to put up with those ridiculous, well, I think they're ridiculous, presentational classes like 1 column, 2 column, 3 column. There's just no need for it. Makes everything a lot more clearer, a lot more presentable, no bloat. So there we go, there's our basic structure markup for our website. It's just the content at the moment, so we need to get on with styling. So in here, obviously I've already done the row. That is imperative that you do that. It's good practice to do that at the start of every single project so you don't forget. Want to open up our header style, and like I said, include base. This is going to be, it's either base or span base, depending on what you use. So base, and then we'll give it a width. We want it to be 100%. Just literally simply write columns, 12, get a background color so you can see that I'm not blagging. I want to give it 4s. There we go. 100% header. Now, yeah, that's not very impressive because it's easy to make a 100% header in normal CSS. But what this can do is you just put 10, include center, and with 2 changes, you have got a header that spans 10 columns and centered. As quick as that. You've got all them styles that you margin, 0, auto, all done for you. Simple as that. Now what you can do is, as well, you can get as technical or as precise as 9.9. You can go down decimal points. So this will shrink a tiny bit. See that? Just go down to 0.5. There you go. But for now, for this tutorial, we want 12, and we don't want it centered. Okay. So again, we need to define our content and include base. We want to give it a width of, we'll say 7, and we'll give it a background color of, we'll give it 6s. There you go. Do the same with the sidebar, and I want to include base again, and we want to do a width of whatever's remaining, so that's 5, and give it a background colour. Give it a nice pink so you can see, so you can see what's going on. Okay, now you may have noticed that this isn't behaving. This sidebar isn't where we want it to be, where we would have imagined it to be. Now, you also notice the space here. There's also an invisible space that you can't see here. This space is caused by the row constraining our two elements, and the row is currently set here as max width 1400 pixels. So I'll come back and show you that in a second. But right now, the important thing is imagine the invisible row. Okay, the row is there, you just can't see it. It's constraining these two elements. Now, inside that row, you've got the content section and the sidebar section. And the sidebar section is the last child in the row. So to get it to behave, we simply need to go into the sidebar, include last child mixin, and this will now behave. Simple as that. You've got your space here, and it's centered because we've got the row constraining the two elements. Okay? Now, the reason why I put last child as a mix-in and not on every single element as default is because it would result in a lot of repeated code, a lot of bloat, and it's just not needed. I've given you the responsibility to know when to include this into your layouts. It might be a bit of a hardship for some, but it's literally better than having a lot of repeated code, and it keeps your code dry. Okay, so I said I'd show you the max width. So if we change this to 1000 pixels, we'll see this shrink. Okay, just like that, simple as that. Change it back because I've got a nice wide monitor. I'm actually going to I'm going to show you how easy it is to change to a 24 column layout. I'm just going to copy the value that I've got here. We're just going to change this to 24. And it's going to look like it's broke, but remember it's at a 24 columns. Okay, so we refresh, and yes, it looks like it's broke. All we have to do is we go into our style, change things to 24. We want this to be 17, don't we? And we want this again to be 5. That's fine. There we go. 24 column layout. Simple as that. Okay, I can't. Oh no, I can't count. That should be 7. That's embarrassing. Right, so there we go. It's have a 24 column layout. Change it all back now. Go back to our 24 layout. Change the variables back to 12 and 8.3, and we're back. Simple as that. You just made those changes extremely quickly. Obviously, it'd be a bit more taxing if you had a lot of elements, but you get the gist of it. Right, let's style our footer. Want to include base again. Want to include. We wanted to give it a width. A width of 12 columns again because we want it to be full width, and we'll give it a background color again to see what's going on. There you go. So that's a very basic layout, and it's fluid. It's not responsive, but it is fluid. So let's make it responsive. Go down to your responsive media queries that we've set up here for you. Let's get rid of this. This is just placeholder. We want to. Good rule of thumb is to put everything in these two media queries apart from the row. So let's make use of this feature in Sublime Text. You literally just put header, content, sidebar, footer. So you need everything apart from the row. So what this will do now is when it gets down to these breakpoints, it's going to stack everything on top of each other. So let's get down to the iPad. There you go. Now do the same for the iPhone, but Chrome won't let me go down that far. I'll show you in Firefox in a second. And we can see that our row will contain our two main, our content and our sidebar, and there won't be any container errors or drops. There you go. And the div is still containing, the row is still containing the two essential items. It's working perfectly. Right then, so the next thing is let's add some nested elements. So say in our sidebar we wanted 50% to be an advert and the other 50% to be an advert. And that's really easy. Go into our sidebar class. We want to remember to define a row class. That's very essential. Close that off. And we want to, let's call it adverts. Adverts here. Okay, I'm just going to simply copy this, save time. There we go, see it's stacking. So all we've got to do now is style it. Want to include base, and we want to include last child because obviously there will be a last child. And we want the width to be, we want the width to be 50-50, so it's 6 columns. And we'll give the background colour white, just to show what's going on. And there you go, you've got a nested, and it is responsive. It goes down to the iPad and it still has 50-50. Now the problem, well, the thing that we're probably going to want on the iPhone screen is we're going to want them to stack as well. And that's easily done as well. So there's your iPad, and then your iPhone. You're going to want it to stack one on top of the other, most likely. So all you do is you go into here, into your iPhone media query, and we just add the adverts class and refresh, and we've stacked. Simple as that. Stays responsive. Right, I'm going to show you let's do a little navigation in the header here. Very simple navigation. So let's define a container for our nav. Do it in an unordered list. Should really learn Zen coding because that would help me do this a lot quicker. Okay, in fact, let's just have 4 home. Just have 4 home links. Why not? Okay, so let's style that again. So under the header, include base. We want to give it a last child as well because there's more than one thing. And we want to give it a width. So there's 4 of them, so we want each one to be 3 because 4 goes into 3 12 times. And we want to do, I want to give it a background colour. No, actually we'll leave that for now. Okay. Don't need the last child because it's the containing element. Sorry, that's my fault. Okay, now we go into our unordered list selector, and we want to, we're going to set the padding, the horrible padding as 0 and the default padding as 0, and get rid of, strip the padding and margin off. Okay, there we go. Now we want to include the base here. We want to, this is where we want to include the last child. And we want to do the width 3 here. So we can go back and change this to 4, give it more room. But we want each list item to be 3 because there is 4 of them. So 3 times 4 is 12. We'll give it a background colour of white so you can see what's happening. Done. Let's get rid of that horrible list style as well. There you go. Easy as that. You've got your little margins here. Now I'm going to illustrate. You've got this margin here as well. I'm going to illustrate to you now the span base. So the border box grid system. They're all interchangeable. So our nav is just the normal base, and we're going to change the unordered list to span base, and we're going to do, probably get rid of that, and there you go, you see it's closed up. But obviously there is still this margin here. It's being separated, each element's being separated by padding now, not margin. That's important to remember. We could do the same thing on here, so we could literally just go span base, and it's just going to get rid of this bit of margin here. And we didn't even need to change the columns to column span. You know, they're both completely interchangeable. So take this back, what I had it before, and you'll see this text bump over here again. There you go. And we change this back to base. Sorry if I add last again, include last child. Habit. Okay, now next thing we want to do is make it responsive, because as you can see it gets smaller and smaller and it just breaks. So that's ridiculous. So we want to go, we'll start on our iPad section first. Do it incrementally so you can see what's going on. So obviously that's a bit better, but it's not being contained. So the important thing here is, because I made a mixin for the ClearFix, you can literally just add ClearFix to your unordered list, and header is now going to contain your unordered list. Easy. Literally that simple. Next thing to do is probably make it, well there you go, it's responsive. It's responsive all the way for your iPad, so it gets to a certain point and it will just, but it starts to break there. So the best thing to get rid of this is to stop things from dropping down, is to give it a minimum width. Now giving it minimum width is absolutely fine. It goes all the way down to IE 8, probably even 7, but it supports anyway. Now this is the reason we defined, well I defined a containing element. Just easy to keep track of for me personally. Yes, if you're going to have a well thought out project. But anyway, for the purposes of tutorial, let's just add a min width, and we'll give it 320 pixels. So now you don't get any of that horrible text dropping down, letters dropping down from you and messing up your margin, and you still get responding. Okay. Now the thing is, you're going to want to make sure it stacks one on top of each other when you get down to the iPhone size, because as you can see here, because we defined a min width, it actually breaks. So the thing to do here is go into your iPhone, and we want to define our URL. And obviously it's stacked on one on top of each other, so that's worked, but we've still got this problem with the minimum width that we specified in our navigation causing a problem here. Now to get rid of that, really simple, just define nav again here, and we were just going to overwrite the minimum width to 0, save our file, refresh, and we get it working. Literally as simple as that. So our iPhone stacks everything on top of each other. Our iPad gives us a bit more, because it's got more screen real estate, gives us more room to play with, and you can stack out horizontally again. And then when we get to desktop and laptop size or bigger screens, and we go back to the normal layout. And that's just a very, very quick tester of what this grid system can do. I'd really appreciate if you can just download it, hammer it, test it, put it through its paces, tell me if you get any problems, literally any issues whatsoever, bug issues. I'll help you out. Just tweet me at Rich M Watts, and I'll try and help you out. I'm gonna get the documentation fully set up in the next couple of days, but this should help you. Just again, go over what I've shown you in here, and just keep to those rules, and you'll soon get the hang of it. It's a very rapid prototyping tool or website development tool without the use of horrible presentational classes. Now, obviously, yeah, my markup is a bit to be desired, but it's a lot more semantic than using 1 column, 2 column, 3 column. Thanks very much.